Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 6. We're going to talk about Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf from 1988. I rented this from Amazon Prime. I have probably seen this before, but I didn't remember it. As always, we begin with a prominent crew and cast. This was directed by Ray Patterson, written by Jim Ryan. Ray Patterson was unknown to me, but worked in animation from 1929 until his retirement in 1993. In that 64-year span, he worked for almost every major animation company and with a literal who's who of animation legends. In 1999, he received a Winsor McKay Award for contributions to animation. I could find little info on Jim Ryan other than a long list of animation credits at imdb.com. The cast includes Don Messick as Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, Casey Kasem as Shaggy, B.J. Ward as Googie, Hamilton Camp as Dracula, Rob Paulsen as Brunch, and Frank Welker as Crunch. Don Messick was the original and only voice actor for Scooby-Doo from 1969 until he retired in 1996. In 1952, Casey Kasem was drafted into the U.S. Army and sent to Korea. There, he worked as a DJ announcer on Armed Forces Radio. After his military service, Kasem began his career as a radio announcer or disc jockey. At the end of the 60s, he began the two projects for which he is best known, voicing Shaggy Rogers and hosting the original American Top 40. He voiced Shaggy with one short break until 2009, which is also the year he stopped hosting Top 40 radio countdowns. B.J. Ward has a long career as a voice actress on film and television. I was most intrigued to find that she provided the voice for quite a few rides and attractions at various Disney-owned theme parks. Hamilton Camp maintained a dual career as a singer-songwriter and actor-voice actor. We first discussed Rob Paulsen and Frank Welker when we talked about Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman. While I didn't find this film entirely satisfying, I can appreciate its appeal to certain audiences. Let me articulate its strengths before delving into my reservations. The movie offers a lighthearted adventure brimming with visual humor, wordplay, and rapid-fire jokes. Shaggy and Scooby-Doo maintain their characteristic charm, while Scrappy-Doo's often grating personality is mercifully subdued here. The monster designs are impressively rendered, providing a family-friendly introduction to the iconic creatures of classic Hollywood horror. The film's low-stakes plot, driven by Dracula and his comically inept cohorts, a point that we will revisit later, they create a non-threatening atmosphere suitable for younger viewers. However, therein lies my main critique. The movie's benign nature, appropriate for its target audience, ultimately renders it forgettable. It feels like an extended episode of the television series. The recurring gags, initially amusing, lose their luster as the story progresses. In essence, the film succeeds in delivering its intended brand of humor and adventure. It also fails to transcend the limitations of its source material, resulting in an experience that, while pleasant, lacks any impact. Now, perhaps the biggest surprise to me in this film was the very existence of Googie. Rarely does Shaggy have a romantic interest, and when he does, in my memory, it's usually Velma, although that's not a common or regular thing, so I had to do some research. This is the only appearance of Googie. She is apparently named after an architecture theme from the 40s to the 60s, which I find weird. The style is most popular amongst motels, coffee houses, and gas stations. Her design and clothing color scheme is indirectly linked to the theme, which features sharp corners, geometric shapes, and bright neon colors. So now let's cover the synopsis. Shaggy wins the Wacky Races car race with the help of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. A roster of monsters consisting of Frankenstein's monster, his wife Repulsa, a mummy, the Witch Sisters, Bone Jangles, the Skeleton, Dr. Jackal, Mr. Snide, Swamp Thing, and Dragonfly gather at Count Dracula's castle in Transylvania for the annual Monster Road Rally, a road race similar to Wacky Races. The winner is branded Monster of the Year and gets prizes announced by Dracula's wife and co-host, Vanna Pyre. Dracula receives a postcard from the Wolfman stating that he has retired to Florida and will not be participating. Dracula fears that they must cancel the race due to this absence. Luckily, Dracula's wolf-like servant, Wolfgang, knows of a way to create a new werewolf. Every 5 centuries, for 3 consecutive nights, the full moon is in a position and its light will turn a human into a werewolf. The person in line to become the next werewolf is Shaggy Rogers. Dracula sends 2 hunchback henchmen, the Hunch Bunch, consisting of the unintelligent, incomprehensible Crunch and the sly, well-articulated Brunch, to turn Shaggy into a werewolf and deliver him to the castle. The first night, the Hunch Bunch cut a hole above Shaggy's bedroom to let the moon shine on him. Scooby overhears their plan and rescues Shaggy just in time, but can't convince Shaggy and Scrappy of the Hunch Bunch's existence. The second night, they go after Shaggy while he shops at the supermarket, but miss their opportunity again due to sheer incompetence. On the final night, Shaggy takes his girlfriend Googie to a drive-in movie. The Hunch Bunch exposes Shaggy to moonlight by lowering the sunroof on his race car. Shaggy transforms into a werewolf. However, the Hunch Bunch's celebration is cut short as they discover that Shaggy's hiccups alternate him between his human and werewolf forms. Not noticing that Shaggy transformed into a werewolf, Googie sends Shaggy to the snack bar to get a cure for his hiccups. He unintentionally terrifies other movie patrons along the way. Scooby hears a werewolf is loose in the theater and hides in a random car. The Hunch Bunch attempt to abduct Shaggy, who runs. The crowd chases Shaggy, the werewolf. Upon meeting Scooby and seeing his reflection, Shaggy flees the drive-in in his car with Scooby, Scrappy, and Googie in tow. They escape thanks to the car's customized gadgets. Shaggy loses his hiccups in the pursuit and becomes trapped in his werewolf form. The Hunch Bunch knocks the group out with moon dust from their Batcopter vehicle and tows the group back to Transylvania. Dracula informs Shaggy he was turned into a werewolf to fill the missing slot in his Monster Road rally. Now, Shaggy wants no part of being a werewolf and refuses to participate in Dracula's race. Dracula pressures Shaggy, hyping the pre-race party and all the prizes. Dracula imprisons Shaggy and the gang in a locked guest bedroom. Dracula feeds them food so disgusting that even Shaggy and Scooby lose their appetite. An impressive feat. Shaggy still refuses to race, so Dracula offers him a bargain. If Shaggy drives in the race and wins, Dracula will change him back to human and allow the gang to leave. Shaggy agrees, but Dracula plans to double-cross Shaggy and keep him as a werewolf. The gang is then treated as honored guests. Dracula shows them the course for the race and consents to let them navigate the track in their own race car. Dracula rigs the track by sending the Hunch Bunch to implement traps. Despite their efforts, Shaggy completes the course like a pro. The Count worries that he may actually lose his werewolf. He subsequently alters the race course and sabotages the werewolf wagon, which is a souped-up VW Beetle, by the way. The Hunch Bunch keeps Shaggy awake all night. Next morning, Googie energizes Shaggy with a kiss. He repairs the werewolf wagon on the fly. The monsters conspire against Shaggy and Scooby, thanks to Googie and Scrappy, who follow along as their pit crew, as well as the general incompetence of Dracula and his crew. The bad guys do more harm to themselves than to Shaggy. Finally, Dracula unleashes his secret weapon, a towering ape-like beast named Genghis Kong. Kong snatches Scooby. As the monsters near the finish line, Googie and Scrappy rescue Shaggy and Scooby. All four work together to topple Kong onto the other cars, leaving an easy path to victory for Shaggy. Furious his schemes have failed, Dracula refuses to undo the spell, lying that there is really no way to turn Shaggy back. Vanna Pyre accidentally spills that the solution is in Dracula's spellbook. The gang steal the book and make their escape. Dracula pursues in his weaponized car and then in his plane. The four barely dodge Dracula's powerful gadgets. Just before Dracula beats them, lightning strikes Dracula's plane, sending him plummeting into the ocean below, where a shark chases him off. Back home, Googie changes Shaggy back to normal. The gang sit down to watch another horror movie and eat pizza. In this final scene, Dracula and the Hunch Bunch sneak up to the window and menacingly announce their return as the film ends. The transformations here are even less impressive than Fangface. A simple poof of smoke and Shaggy is a werewolf. Poof. And he's human again. In the interest of maintaining the iconic Shaggy look, the werewolf look itself is a fairly minor adjustment, mostly just fur, fangs, and short claws on his fingertips. It's a simple look that reads both werewolf and Shaggy. Shaggy werewolf, as it were. Now, perhaps the least interesting thing about this film is the werewolf lore. Scooby-Doo is one of the most enduring animated franchises in television history, capturing the imaginations of generations of viewers with its characters, mysteries, and its blend of comedy and spookiness. From its beginnings in 1969 to a multimedia empire spanning TV shows, movies, comic books, and merchandising, the Scooby-Doo brand has become a pure piece of pop culture nostalgia. I can't summarize it all, so this will skip a lot of information. The origins of Scooby-Doo trace back to the late 60s when CBS executive Fred Silverman sought to replicate the hit show The Archies. Silverman contacted Hanna-Barbera about creating a similar show based on a teenage rock group, but with a twist. The band members would solve mysteries. Silverman envisioned the show as a cross between two popular programs, the I Love a Mystery radio serials of the 40s and the early 60s TV show, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera tasked storyman Joe Ruby and Ken Spears and artist character designer Ueo Takamoto to develop the show. Their initial concept bore the title Mysteries 5 and featured 5 teens, Jeff, Mike, Kelly, Linda, and Linda's brother, WW, in a band of the same name and their dog, Too Much. The group would solve supernatural mysteries. They made Too Much a Great Dane, primarily to avoid mimicking the Archie's sheepdog. Takamoto consulted a studio colleague who bred Great Danes to learn about their characteristics, and then intentionally designed Too Much to be the opposite of a prize-winning Great Dane, giving him severely bowed legs, a double chin, and a sloped back, among other abnormalities. The show inched closer to its final form. Jeff and Mike had merged into Fred, Kelly became Daphne, and Linda was now Velma, and Shaggy, formerly WW, was no longer her brother. The show's proposed title changed to Who's Scared? Executives at CBS felt it would be too frightening for young viewers and decided to pass, which sent it back for another round of revisions. Ruby and Spears made it more comedic and less scary. The rock band element was dropped, and the show became more focused on Shaggy and Too Much. Silverman was reportedly inspired by an ad-lib in Frank Sinatra's recording of the song Strangers in the Night, and rechristened the show Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? CBS executives approved the revised show for production. Each character has an established personality and function within the group. Fred is the leader and a determined detective. Velma is highly intelligent and analytical. Daphne can be observant, but is danger-prone and vain, while best friends Shaggy and Scooby-Doo are cowardly, perpetually hungry, and motivated by food. Each character also has a function serving the plot. Fred suggests that they split up to search for clues, while Velma's skepticism helps the gang determine that the villain isn't an actual ghost. Other recurring character quirks occur both as comedic effects and as plot elements, such as Velma losing her glasses or Scooby and Shaggy being bribed with food to do something dangerous. These characteristics have remained mostly consistent throughout the years. Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Premiered in 1969 and quickly became a hit due to its distinctive formula combining elements of the supernatural humor and sleuthing of old-fashioned whodunit mysteries. Each episode featured the gang encountering or being told about an evil ghost or monster causing trouble and offering to help solve the mystery. While hunting for clues, the gang, especially Shaggy and Scooby, are chased by the monster. After collecting and analyzing the clues, they determine that the monster is not supernatural and unmask someone generally trying to commit a crime or cover their crime up. The culprit is arrested by law enforcement, bitter at being stopped by, and I quote, those meddling kids. However, the show transcended its repetitive structure based on the chemistry between the core characters. Now, because the formula was so effective, Hanna-Barbera repeatedly used it to develop new programming. By the time the second Scooby-Doo series aired in 1972, the studio had already produced other shows using the formula, including Josie and the Pussycats in 1970, which resurrected the idea of rock band crime fighters, and The Funky Phantom in 1971, which featured a mystery-solving team of 3 teens, a real ghost, and his ghostly cat. It is not uncommon to find elements from Scooby-Doo episodes repurposed for the clone cartoons, including character types, music, and sound effects. Just a few of the clones include the Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan in 1972, Goober and the Ghost Chasers in 1973, Speed Buggy in 1973, and Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels in 1977. When Joe Ruby and Ken Spears left Hanna-Barbera in 1977 to start Ruby Spears Productions, their first cartoon was Fangface, another Scooby-Doo clone. The next iteration of Scooby-Doo was an hour-long program called The New Scooby-Doo Movies, starting in 1972. Each episode would feature a guest star or stars who would need help from the gang or would team up to solve a mystery. Guest stars included fictional characters like Batman and Robin and the Addams Family, and animated renditions of actual real celebrities like Don Knotts and Phyllis Diller. In most cases, the celebrities voiced their animated doppelgangers from the show. Scooby-Doo moved from CBS to ABC in 1976, and several new characters began to be introduced, including a new semi-regular character, Scooby-Dum, who is Scooby's dim-witted cousin. Another new character and relation would define the franchise for the 80s, Scooby-Doo's rambunctious nephew, Scrappy-Doo. The undeniable success of Scrappy-Doo at the time prompted a radical overhaul. Fred, Daphne, and Velma were dropped or reduced to make Scrappy a central character alongside Scooby and Shaggy. The tried and true formula was replaced with villains who now commonly prove to be of supernatural origin instead of disguised criminals. Other new characters were introduced: Flim Flam and Vincent Van Ghoul, modeled and voiced by Vincent Price. A Scooby-Doo series featured a story arc centering on Shaggy and Scooby's quest to recapture evil spirits, accidentally released from imprisonment. It was canceled before its conclusion, but over 30 years later, the plot finally wrapped up in the direct-to-video film Scooby-Doo and the Curse of the 13th Ghost. The final major appearances of Scrappy-Doo were in 3 made-for-television movies, including 2 Scooby-Doo Werewolf movies, one of which we're talking about now, one of which we'll get to in a little bit. A resurgent interest in the 90s spurred new animated series with updated looks and formats, including a pup named Scooby-Doo, an innovative prequel focusing on the characters as children, and continued direct-to-video films. As a consequence of their parent company's financial troubles, Hanna-Barbera was purchased by Turner Broadcasting System in 1991. Turner put their newfound animation assets to work, launching Cartoon Network in 1992 and Cartoon Network Studios just 2 years later. New Scooby-Doo series soon followed. In 1997, Turner merged with Time Warner, bringing Hanna-Barbera and the Cartoon Network under the umbrella of Warner Brothers, who have owned Scooby-Doo along with a back catalog of Hanna-Barbera and Ruby Spears since the merger. This era marked the rise of Scooby-Doo in other media forms, including the live-action theatrical films Scooby-Doo in 2002 and Scooby-Doo 2: Monsters Unleashed in 2004, both major box office hits. The first film was the last project William Hanna was involved in, and he passed away on the day the film was released. On television, the iconic mystery-solving format was revived with a hugely successful What's New Scooby-Doo, with clever updated takes on ghosts and monsters using modern visual effects. Since 2003, Warner Brothers has maintained a steady stream of direct-to-video Scooby-Doo films and shorts, releasing an average of 2 titles per year. The gang returned to live action on the small screen for a prequel film about how they first met, entitled Scooby-Doo: The Mystery Begins, which premiered on Cartoon Network on September 13, 2009, the 40th anniversary of the original debut. It was a massive success and the highest rated broadcast in the history of Cartoon Network to date. It might have been surpassed since then. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated premiered in 2010 and does not exist in the continuity of any prior Scooby-Doo series or movie. The gang lives in an extensive alternate universe centered on the town of Crystal Cove. The series explores the gang's interpersonal relationships in a way not previously seen, as well as their relationships with their families. Further distinguishing itself from other series, Mystery Incorporated features a dark, sinister tone and pits the gang against both natural and supernatural villains in a series-long story arc. Now, while a successful franchise, Scooby-Doo won few awards during its lifespan. The series has received only 2 Emmy nominations in its history. Like many Hanna-Barbera shows, Scooby-Doo was criticized for poor production values and formulaic storytelling. Even series proponents often comment negatively about the formula inherent in most episodes. Nevertheless, Scooby-Doo has maintained a significant fan base, which has grown steadily since the 90s due to the show's popularity among both children and nostalgic adults who grew up with the series. The show's mix of comedy, adventure, and horror genres is often noted as the reason for its success. Scooby-Doo's ghosts, monsters, and spooky locales tend more towards humor than horror, making them easily accessible to children. Many teenage and young adult audiences enjoy Scooby-Doo because of presumed subversive themes, including theories of drug use and sexuality. One sign of this influence is how prevalent references to Scooby-Doo are in other media. One example, the television series Buffy the Vampire Slayer refers to the main characters as the Scooby Gang, or Scoobies, a clear reference to Scooby-Doo. Scooby's longevity is a testament to its appeal as a horror comedy mystery hybrid, transcending evolving animation styles and storytelling trends. At its core, Scooby-Doo represents a comforting, nostalgic escape into supernatural adventures solved through human ingenuity and logic. Kids resonated with the group dynamic, the fearful cowards, the leaders, the intellectuals, and the loyal companionship between Scooby and Shaggy. Scooby-Doo remains one of the most successful and ubiquitous animated franchises ever. Its impact spans over 50 years of television at this point, and films across multiple networks and eras, hundreds of products and merchandise lines. Few other animated series have left as big a mark on pop culture consciousness. As long as kids crave that comfort food blend of gasping scares and hearty chuckles, Scooby-Doo endures as an all-time great. Now, villains are often depicted as shrewd and calculating. However, there exists a unique category of antagonists who break this mold. the incompetent villain. These characters, whose ineptitude and lack of self-awareness are often central to the plot, both amuse and baffle audiences. Let's consider Dracula in this particular film. His actions potentially reveal a surprising and almost sympathetic motivation, a deep-seated longing for companionship. Dracula proposes a deceptive bargain. If Shaggy wins the race, he can go free. But Dracula has no intention of honoring this agreement. Paradoxically, he still tries to prevent Shaggy from winning. Why? Because if Shaggy stays after losing, it would be a choice, albeit one made under false pretenses, but a choice nonetheless. Dracula appears fixated on Shaggy willingly choosing to be a werewolf. This behavior might stem from Dracula's eternal solitude. He may see Shaggy as a potential companion, another outsider in the mortal world. By encouraging Shaggy to accept his supernatural side, Dracula hopes to create an unlikely bond based on their shared otherness. It's a clumsy attempt at connection, executed with little finesse and no subtlety. This ineptitude extends beyond Dracula's social awkwardness, permeating nearly every aspect of his dastardly endeavors. Whether it's relying on bumbling henchmen or hatching overly complicated schemes, the Lord of the Undead consistently finds himself tripping over his own cape, much to the delight of the audience. Now, Dracula is far from alone in his buffoonish misadventures. The annals of popular culture are rife with incompetent villains whose own grand aspirations are consistently undermined by their own foolishness. Take Team Rocket in Pokemon. These characters serve as refreshing counterpoints to the brooding, overly serious antagonists that populate many narratives. Perhaps it's their relatability that makes incompetent villains so endearing. In their fumbling attempts at villainy, we can catch glimpses of our own foibles and shortcomings. Their failures, while comical, also serve as a reminder that true villainy often lies not in grand gestures of malice, but in the small, mundane cruelties that we inflict on one another through ignorance, selfishness, or sheer incompetence. As we laugh at Dracula's desperate ploys for friendship or cringe at the latest botched heist by Team Rocket, let's also recognize the importance of these bumbling antagonists. They remind us that even in the darkest of narratives, there is room for levity and self-reflection. And who knows, perhaps someday, through sheer dumb luck or a cosmic fluke, one of these incompetent villains might succeed in their nefarious goals. A reminder that sometime it is the foolish who inherit the world, however briefly. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, thanks to an internet outage at my house, I will be discussing Full Eclipse from 1993 since I could watch this on DVD. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.